What's going on, guys? Back with another video. Team So Wealthy. You already know what's going on. They say the sky's the limit, but there ain't no limit for us. You feel me? And like, share, comment, subscribe. You feel me? Turn on post notification bell to get notified every time I drop a video. You feel me? And I'm dropping back to back to back. You feel me? Every day upload.
It was much better, like it could easily be divided into small fractions and was more easily transferred. Of course, on the flip side, Bitcoin wasn't backed by anything. The value of Bitcoin was based on people believing it had value and being willing to purchase it. The price you could see
most all the other meme coins and stuff like that, you feel me? It's the community behind the coin. That's just like Dogecoin, you feel me? Dogecoin still wouldn't be nothing. It was a meme coin. It was a joke the whole time, you feel me? Joking on Bitcoin and all the rest of the cryptos and once they made the Dogecoin and people started buying it, it just took a mind of its own, just took itself and just started to go big. You feel me? And like people made millions, talking about millions off of a little bit of nothing. Well, it was a nice investment, but you feel me? To take that investment and invest and be able to come out 4 or 5 million out of that little investment, it's crazy.
sell your Bitcoin for was based on the price someone else was willing to buy Bitcoin for. It's supply and demand. Then again, this is essentially the same as any currency. So the Winklevoss twins felt they needed to delve further into this. They exchanged contact details with David and said they'd get back to him. The Winklevoss twins then went away and dived into research on the world of cryptocurrency. They soon realized that Bitcoin had a bit of a dark reputation. Back in 2012, most people seemed to think it was mostly used for drug deals, money laundering, or tax evasion. And to be fair, it often was. It was also very popular with libertarians who wanted a system of money where the government couldn't interfere. The twins also read stories about people having their Bitcoin wallets hacked, or simply losing it and having to search through landfill sites to try and find it. However, despite these issues, the technology itself seemed innovative, and it was clear Bitcoin had a loyal community who supported it. The twins felt that if more people knew of it and understood it, then Bitcoin could be huge. They also saw that the first known time Bitcoin was used to purchase an actual product was in May 2010, when a guy in Florida wanted some pizza and posted on an online forum saying he'd transfer someone 10,000 Bitcoins if they ordered a couple of pizzas to his address. The transaction was a success, although looking back now, he probably wouldn't call it a success. Years later, when one Bitcoin reached a price of $60,000, those 10,000 Bitcoins would have been worth $600 million.
And 10,000 Bitcoin then was, you feel me? When it hit 20K, this at 20K, well 60K, boom, where he said it hit 69K, you feel me? 60 million, $600 million. Like, come on now, that's crazy.
As if he'd kept them, instead of using them to buy 2 pizzas. But still, back then nobody could have known what Bitcoin was going to become. All the Winklevoss twins knew was they wanted to be a part of it. Firstly, the twins decided to become investors in Charlie Schrem's Bitcoin exchange company, BitInstant. They reportedly put around $1.5 million in to become part owners of the company. But that was just the start of the Winklevoss plans. They also asked Charlie to buy them $100,000 worth of Bitcoin for themselves. Back then, Charlie was used to dealing in orders of a few $100s, so this was huge. And then a few days later, the twins asked him to buy another $100,000 worth of Bitcoin for them, and the orders just kept coming. Before long, the Winklevoss had bought around 1% of all Bitcoin, roughly 200,000 coins, back when the price of Bitcoin was below $10 per coin. And luckily for them, some unexpected events on a small island were about to change everything.
Getting an LLC for your business doesn't have to look like this. Just Google LLC Taylor Brands. It's totally easy. You pick a
Banks in Cyprus had made a series of really bad investments. For example, they'd loaned a lot of money to Greece, and then when the Greece economy nosedived, they'd gambled and bought more bonds from the Greek government. As a result, banks in Cyprus were now broke. So Cyprus asked the EU for a bailout, but they said they'd only help Cyprus if they came up with some of the money themselves. The way Cyprus decided to do that was essentially taking money from their own citizens. Banks in Cyprus were ordered to confiscate some funds from their customers to help pay Cyprus's debts. So if you were living in Cyprus at at the time. One morning you'd wake up, check your bank balance, and find that money had been taken from you to help cover the country's debts. When the Winklevoss twins saw this story, they knew it was big. All around the world, this raised alarm bells about the pitfalls of a centralized system where the governments and banks had the power to do whatever they wanted. People felt they needed a store of value that governments couldn't just take. And thus, after the Cyprus incident made headlines worldwide, the price of Bitcoin began to rise. And then it just kept rising. $100 per coin, $500 per coin, $1,000 per coin. And as one news outlet picked the story up about Bitcoin, it caused another to pick the story up. And then it spread more and more, causing the price to keep rising as more people discovered Bitcoin. Meanwhile, the Winklevoss twins were basically traveling around the world promoting Bitcoin. However, the twins felt Bitcoin should embrace some regulation so it could become more mainstream. Sure, it needed to be done in the right way so it didn't kill what made Bitcoin innovative, but they also didn't think the totally unregulated Wild West was good either. They felt having more rules within the crypto space was a good thing, and that it would help distance Bitcoin from its shady reputation. The thing is, many of the early adopters of Bitcoin completely disagreed with them. They felt the whole idea of Bitcoin was that people should be able to do whatever they want with their own money, and the government shouldn't have any insight or involvement. So there was a real conflict between the Winklevi and some of Bitcoin's early users. In fact, even within BitInstant, Charlie's company, which the twins invested in, some of the other people involved in the business didn't trust the twins. They viewed them as the suits, outsiders who didn't share their vision for Bitcoin, and who would sue anyone they didn't agree with. Charlie dismissed these claims at the time, but would later regret that decision when the twins decided to sue him. Before we get to the next chapter, I want to tell you about our video sponsor, Incogni. In the past, when I've signed, and this is too time consuming to get it out, Charlie's company, BitInstant, was becoming incredibly popular. Because the more the popularity of Bitcoin grew, the more people would want to buy Bitcoin, so BitInstant was in a great position. You see, back then, the main actual Bitcoin exchange was called Mt. Gox, a website that had originally been an exchange for the card game Magic the Gathering. It was clunky, totally unregulated, and run by a crazy Frenchman living in Japan calling himself the king of Bitcoin. To actually use the exchange, you had to go through a lengthy process of wiring money overseas, waiting weeks for your account to be approved, and then another week just to get your money in or out. So the whole selling point of Charlie's company, BitInstant, was that it was essentially a middleman. They acquired Bitcoin in bulk from Mt. Gox, and then sold it to people who wanted to buy Bitcoin much more easily and quickly. And the business model was working well. In fact, since the twins had invested in the company to help it grow, BitInstant had gone from processing $1 million a month to around $1 million per day. And Charlie calculated BitInstant was processing around 35% of all Bitcoin purchases at the time. However, the money and fame had kind of gone to Charlie's head. He was traveling the world, partying with models, and as a result, neglecting his CEO duties. It was understandable. Charlie had been a kid most people ignored in high school, and so now he was famous in the crypto space, of course he wanted to enjoy it. A few years ago he'd been living in his mum's basement, now he felt on top of the world. But the Winklevi felt differently. They knew if Charlie didn't get things under control soon, the company would be in trouble. Because although BitInstant was processing a lot of Bitcoin purchases, the company itself wasn't actually profitable yet, and Charlie was asking them for even more money to help cover their rising costs. Plus, everything within the company seemed a little chaotic. Charlie was in his early 20s and didn't exactly have management experience. Tensions between the Winklevi and Charlie got much worse over the next few months. For example, the twins were setting up meetings with influential people in finance to help Bitcoin adoption become more mainstream, and for one of the big meetings, they asked Charlie to come along to talk about BitInstant. However, he turned up hungover, or maybe he was still drunk, but either way, he was a mess and his presentation was a disaster. The twins contemplated replacing Charlie as CEO of BitInstant, and told him bluntly he needed to stop partying and traveling and get serious about running the business. Charlie felt the twins were overreacting though. The company was doing better than ever. Just because they were investors didn't mean they should be micromanaging him like this. But with hindsight, Charlie must have wished he'd listened to them, because just a year later, Charlie would find himself in prison.
When you're starting a business, every dollar counts.
Silk Road was an online black market, a kind of underground Amazon for everything from illegal drugs to guns to hitmen. It was a multi-million-dollar business, and Bitcoin was its currency. However, in 2013, Silk Road was suddenly shut down after the owner was caught, arrested, and sentenced to life in prison. Immediately after the news broke, the price of Bitcoin started falling rapidly. Down and down the price went, and along with it fell the net worth of the Winklevoss. But the twins decided to use this opportunity to buy even more Bitcoin, because they believed in the long term, the death of Silk Road would be.
That was probably the smartest thing they could have did. You feel me? Once they bred, cause in crypto, that's what people do not understand. Like, if you don't sell, you don't lose. You still winning if you don't sell. If you don't sell, you still winning. You feel what I'm saying? If you're not selling, you still winning. When it go down, it's the smart thing to buy more. You feel me? Now you getting it for less than, you feel me? But I ain't gonna say less than you got it before, because you probably got years go away at the bottom that you won't never see again. But say it went up to 60,000 and it came to where it's at right now to like 17,000 and stuff like that. You feel me? Or 15,000. Yeah, it was at 60,000, 70,000, and that's at 17,000 or something like that. You feel like, oh, it's a lot. No, it's not. That you not losing because you haven't sold. You haven't sold your crypto at 17,000, so you're not losing. You feel what I'm saying? And even if because they bought less than $10, so even if they sold at 17,000, they still good.
Because they believed in the long term, the death of Silk Road would be a good thing for Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin had become so associated with this black market that it had been hurting Bitcoin's perceived legitimacy. But then another problem arose. BitInstant, Charlie's company that the twins had invested in, suddenly shut down as well. Turns out that in the wake of the Silk Road drama, BitInstant had lost its license, which designated the company as a legal money transmitter, and Charlie had no choice but to abruptly close completely. He posted on the BitInstant website saying it was just a temporary issue, but the twins knew the company was doomed. Shortly afterwards, in January 2014, things got even worse for Charlie. He was at an airport minding his own business when he suddenly heard the words, "Charlie Schrem, you're under arrest." He was handcuffed and carted off to a jail cell by an officer. He was told it was a combined arrest. This wasn't just police involved, but he saw people with FBI badges, IRS badges, and even the DEA. Charlie had no idea what was going on, but it was clear this was serious and he was terrified. One of the officers started asking him questions about someone with the username BTC King. Suddenly Charlie realized what this was about. Silk Road. You see, for a while, there had been one particularly active user on BitInstant who in total had bought around $1 million worth of Bitcoin. Charlie knew there was a high likelihood the money was going to Silk Road for illegal purchases. And since Charlie was technically BitInstant's compliance officer, he was responsible for this and was meant to report any suspicious activity. But he didn't. In fact, he'd done some transactions off the books in an effort to get around certain legal requirements. Charlie's philosophy was that it wasn't his place to question how many Bitcoin someone wanted or what they did with it, except, legally speaking, it was his place to do that. As a result, Charlie was now being charged with conspiracy to commit money laundering, failing to file a suspicious activity report, and operating an unlicensed money transmitter. Charlie was technically the first Bitcoin felon, the first person to be arrested directly because of Bitcoin, and thus his picture was all over the news. Charlie's parents had to put up their house as collateral to bail him out, and he then had to go back and live with them under house arrest until his sentencing. Charlie's lawyer informed him he could be looking at 25 years in prison. Just a year earlier, Charlie had had all the wealth, fame, and success he'd ever dreamed of, and was running a rapidly growing company. Now, the company was shut down, he was heading to prison, and his entire life was collapsing around him. When Charlie's day in court finally came, he pled guilty in connection with indirectly sending an estimated $1 million in Bitcoin that was used on Silk Road. However, it wasn't quite as bad as he'd feared. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison, much less than had been expected, although admittedly still a scary prospect for the 24-year-old. Unfortunately for him though, that wasn't quite the end of it. When Charlie finally got out of prison in 2016, it wouldn't be long before he was hit with a lawsuit from the Winklevoss, claiming he owed them 5,000 Bitcoin from a previous business deal, which by that point was worth around $32 million.
Them guys stay like finessing, trying to get money up out of people in some type of way. Just like dude, he had a little situation going on with them for 64 million or something like that. And they won 30-some million out of them. 5,000 Bitcoin. God, dog.
2 weeks after Charlie's arrest, the main Bitcoin exchange, Mt. Gox, completely collapsed after 800,000 Bitcoin was stolen from customers' accounts by hackers. With the fall of both BitInstant and Mt. Gox, two of the main ways people bought Bitcoin back then, the Winklevoss knew that Bitcoin needed a new wave of entrepreneurs and companies to make buying crypto safer for people. So they founded their own crypto exchange called Gemini, which has been described as the most regulated crypto exchange in the world. They basically wanted to try and bring some order to the chaos of the Bitcoin community. Other companies would also do something very similar, like Coinbase, FTX, and Binance. For the Winklevoss though, their push to help Bitcoin become more mainstream was paying off. Literally. They claim they've never sold a single Bitcoin. And remember, they own around 1% of all Bitcoin. So within a few years of these more regulated exchanges opening and the Bitcoin price rising higher and higher, Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss became the world's first known Bitcoin billionaires. Of course, Satoshi himself, the mysterious unknown creator of Bitcoin, does have more than them. If he's still alive, he's believed to have 1 million Bitcoin, which would make him one of the richest people in the world. But for the twins, they didn't stop there. They've since expanded into other blockchain-related projects, like Nifty Gateway for NFTs, and they seem to be extremely focused on Web3 and decentralization. The idea of having web services and applications operated and governed by users instead of corporations like Google and Facebook. As a result, some have wondered if they're still seeking revenge on Zuckerberg. What's interesting about this story though, is you can look at it in two ways. On the one hand, you could say
keep saying they don't know who Satoshi dude is or whatever. They keep expecting it being dude because he was the first one to post a video on YouTube talking about Bitcoin and any of that stuff. And it's a lot of things that come to, you feel me? And he buying Bitcoin so low, you feel what I'm saying? It's a lot of things that come into play when it comes to that. There's a lot of things that come into play when it comes to that. You feel what I'm saying? Like, when it comes to that, like, dude, because that's why they think dude is Satoshi for real, because he bought 1 million Bitcoins, you feel me? Like, and the Satoshi dude ain't the richest in the world because dude, he bought 1 million Bitcoin too, but it depends on if whenever the dude, whoever created it, when he got his Bitcoin, most likely he holds the most, but he probably hold a million and he probably got it at the lowest.
Here's how we're going to stop making excuses and learn those languages next year. You throw on a little Pimsleur and you do the chores you had to do.
Beneath the normal internet. What's interesting about this story though, is you can look at it in two ways. On the one hand, you could say it's a story of redemption for the Winklevoss. After the Facebook lawsuit, their image was tarnished and nobody wanted to be involved with them. They'd had the idea for a social network, but missed out on being part of the social media boom because of Zuckerberg taking their idea. So instead, they found a new technology, had the vision to see its potential even really early on, went all in on it, and helped bring Bitcoin to the masses, thus becoming billionaires in the process. However, on the other hand, you could say this is just the story of two rich frat boys getting even richer through luck and fortunate timing. You could say they just got in early and then helped pump up Bitcoin's price, something they still do to this day with arbitrary price predictions. Plus, remember they only had the money to buy so much Bitcoin early on because of the settlement they got from Facebook, which some people think they didn't deserve in the first place, since they didn't do any of the real work on Facebook. They just had a fairly vague idea that wasn't even exactly the same thing as Facebook. Honestly, there's no right answer on any of that. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but I do think this is a fascinating story of the early days of Bitcoin. As for Bitcoin in the present day, whilst it's clearly much more popular than it was a few years ago, the price still fluctuates wildly, and it's unclear if Bitcoin is actually going to be useful long term. One thing is clear though, I will never tell you to message me about any crypto deals, so please be wary of fake impersonators in the comments pretending to be me, as crypto scams are completely out of control, but that's perhaps a story for another day.
But no, that'd be too much, no. And for that story, but that's crazy though. It's crazy how that story, and I ain't really know about them guys, you feel me? And doggone, they were messing with dude, Mark, you know, and doggone shit. I mean, he got the power of having that platform, you feel me? Like dude of buying Twitter, and now he got power of having these platforms, you could promote and sell and do whatever you want on these platforms, definitely when you're on. you know. And these mugs, and y'all not into Bitcoin and no cryptos or whatever, y'all need to check it out. Get into the game, you feel me? Don't miss out, because 10 years from now, Bitcoin could be $1 million just for one. You feel me? And all these other coins right now that you can buy for less than $1, or you can buy at $1, you feel what I'm saying? Or less than $1 right now. You can get them coins and keep it moving. But that's going to be it for this video, and I'm out. Peace.
Peter Pan, that's what they call me. I promise that you never be lonely.